to Rumble.
I'm on Rumble too, and I'm
Yeah.
also on Minds,
Okay.
and actually at Turley's suggestion. So that one is a kind of a pre-record, and then when I download onto Podomatic, it automatically goes to iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify. It's amazing, actually.
Cool.
So anyway, Michael Shaw's with us. We do this thing every Wednesday at 2 p.m. my time in Boston, which I think is your time as well. You're in Washington now, right, Mike?
Well, I'm Northern Virginia,
Okay.
but close enough.
Yeah, you're in the suburbs of the beast.
The- yes.
And we talk politics and science, kind of an intersection because you're a science writer, you're a chemist, you've got over 1,000 columns posted over the years. We've been talking about the pandemic, obviously, which, by the way, speaking of which, um, news today indicates that it's dropping rapidly.
Well, that's what they say, but I guess I'll believe it when Tony Fauci says we can back off.
And of course, he's not saying anything of the kind. He's like, well, this
Right.
is going to go for the rest of the year. Um, I mean, I think that the CDC says it is. And I don't know if that's because of the increase in vaccines or if it's because simply it's just by nature, probably maybe a combination of both of those things.
Yeah, well, it's a good old fashioned herd immunity.
Okay.
And it remains to be seen if they're going to break out the vaccine as being a big part of this or not. I mean, it's too soon to tell. They can't even guarantee people that A, they won't get the bug if they have the vaccine, or B, they won't be able to spread it. And indeed, there's stories of people who were vaccinated and a few weeks later died of COVID, supposedly.
Do we have any data on that at this point in terms of people's response or any potential side effects that might be bad?
Well, the official position, of course, is that no matter what happens, it wasn't the vaccine. And there was a case, I believe on Sunday, of a guy, and again, there's very little data, in his 70s, who was at Javits Center. They were doing this big vaccination drive, and here was this guy. And they said, okay, thank you. You've had the shot. Now sit there for 15 minutes, please. And make sure there's no reaction. And 15 minutes later, the guy gets up. And as he's walking away, he drops dead, basically. So
that's troubling. I mean, in my case, I have an appointment with like an online visit with the allergy department at Mass General, who
okay.
want to consult with me about my taking the vaccine. And I think what they recommend there is 30 minutes.
Yeah.
They observe me. And the reason I have the appointment is because I had a bad reaction to a flu vaccine a couple of years ago, and I haven't had one since.
Okay.
But boy, I mean, do we have any stats on this at this point or not?
Well, they're very conflicting. I mean, there is a website where the vaccine reactions are posted. Of course, it's unmoderated, so people can post whatever, and it may or may not be true. But on the other hand, not everybody posts stuff, so it's we're not getting good information. Let me put it that way. It seems to be a worse case for people that have already had COVID and recovered, and then get this vaccine. Whether that's because you're really overloading your system, I just don't know.
Well, that would make sense. I mean, why would somebody even get the vaccine if they've already had it because they've got immunity, right? At least for a time.
Well, there's two things that bother me. One is that there's a push, as there should be, for kids to go back to school.
Sure.
And the CDC has said, you don't even need to be vaccinated, teachers or students, go back to school. All right. So then riddle me this, bad man. If you don't need to be vaccinated to go back to school, And there are people who have had COVID and have bad reaction from the vaccine. I mean, what is it that's so special about the vaccine-derived immunity compared to just good old-fashioned your body doing it immunity?
Mhm.
And there's fanatics on all sides. There are people that are,
Isn't it true conventionally that usually once you've had something like this, you do have immunity, at least for a time?
well, that's been the conventional wisdom for about 300 years, but maybe uh, they're trying to push a narrative here.
Okay.
Because there is on the, I believe, CDC website, that very question is asked. I've had COVID, I recovered, do I need the vaccine?
Right.
All right, conventional wisdom would be, no, you don't. But that's not the narrative that's being pushed. I mean, in general, vaccines are to protect people that had no inherent immunity. That's what Edward Jenner discovered
Mhm.
when he compared the milkmaids to people that weren't milkmaids, cowpox versus smallpox, and so forth. So I think seems to be an agenda of there's people on the anti-vax side that are crazy, and there's
Right.
people on the pro-vax side that are just as crazy. I've actually heard people say that if anybody dies after taking the vaccine, they were going to die anyway at that very moment. There was some academic guy with some credentials that said that.
That's terrible. I would think that what do I know? I'm not a doctor, but and nor do I claim to have any scintilla of authority in this subject. But
But you have played one on TV.
it seems to me that if someone is going to get the vaccine, the first step might be to get tested to see if they've already had the virus. And if they have, then maybe not in terms of getting the vaccine.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, but here's the problem. All right, this virus has been out there for well over a year.
Right.
I would believe that virtually everybody has been exposed to it.
Sure.
So you have, after a fashion, some amount of immunity that might not be enough. But if you've had the acute disease, there's nothing better for conferring antibodies than that. On some vaccines, it's true they put in what are called adjuvants that make it a little more powerful what they're giving you, but I don't believe that's the case here. You're simply creating the antigen, and then you're creating the antibodies against that. I also found out that the Moderna vaccine is about 3 times more powerful than the BioNTech Pfizer.
Is
Why
that
that
good?
is,
Is
I
that
have
a
no
good thing
idea.
or a bad thing? I mean, what should we glean from that?
I don't know what to glean from it because they apparently still had the same amount of efficacy, although the way efficacy is determined is a little sketchy too.
Mhm.
Most people would think, well, does it prevent you from getting the acute disease? But I don't believe that's how they tested it. I think what they did is they give people the vaccine, and then you can walk around in the wild, so to speak, and see if you're going to pick up the virus.
Huh.
But I would imagine that, compared to the polio vaccine, the test case would be, all right, I had the vaccine and I'm not going to get polio, whether I may have an antibody for it. So
That was
there's
the
a lot of stuff
assumption.
that still has to come out.
Now the numbers are dropping in this
Yes.
country. Hospitalizations dropping, contagions dropping, deaths are dropping, but we have all of this rumor, at least, if not fact, that there are other variations on their way that are
Yes.
going to reinfect. What do you know about that?
Okay, newsflash, coronaviruses mutate like hell. So this is no surprise. It seems to me to be fear mongering.
Okay.
Well, just because you think you're out of the woods, actually, we identified this rare variant coming out of a specialty island in the Aral Sea that if it infects you, the vaccine may not work.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I heard a story here in Boston that apparently there was some people that came in from England to Columbus, Ohio, and they created like a spread in that city. I don't know. I mean, so I think it is a real thing. I mean, that there are these variants that are
Oh,
coming.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's probably hundreds of variants.
Right.
They haven't all been identified. So seems to me to be more fear mongering.
Okay.
We're going to get you scared about everything.
I know. I mean, I was talking about this with Michael Schmidt in the first hour that he's a blogger that writes his similar views to mine, that the states that are so particularly involved in this kind of mandate power, they're not going to give that up so easy.
Oh, no.
You know?
Oh, no.
It's going to be, if it's not this thing, it'll be the next thing.
Well, now the CDC came out and said, actually, there's probably 83 million people infected instead of the, 30 or 40 million that they thought. The fact is they have no idea.
Right.
Modeling only works if the assumptions are good.
They've also come out with the sudden announcement, and I think it's completely unverified and unbacked by any actual science, that they are convinced, and forget about it, that this virus did not come from the Wuhan lab. It was not a biological weapon. It was not manufactured. Now, I have no idea if it was or wasn't, but it just seems to me like they're announcing this without any kind of, vigorous standards of investigation.
Well, not only that, the announcement that you're talking about that came from WHO, now they're admitting that the investigation was done by the Chinese.
Oh, lovely. And I think it's also safe to say that whether or not it came from a lab, China covered it up for months, and that caused, so you can accurately call it the China virus.
Well, there are people that actually believe.
Let me be more precise. The communist China virus. And I'm not saying that Chinese people have anything to do with this.
There are people who actually believe that the death figure given from China of 4,500 is accurate.
How can they know that? China's not a free country.
So try to wrap your arms around this for a minute. All right. We have 100 times more deaths in a country with 1/5 the population. But there are people that are quoting that as if it were the gospel. It's just amazing how
as the old saying goes, you can trust a communist to be a communist.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know what's going on in China. They don't have freedom of press. They don't have free speech at all. It's not. I mean, in this country, we may complain about limitations that are unprecedented, but in China, there's none. The government controls all means of communication, so we don't know what's going on there.
No.
Other than what might be smuggled out.
Well, what's interesting is that during this pandemic, many people have just lost the ability to produce rational thought.
Mm-hmm.
I would also suspect that one of the reasons that the crisis seems to be on the wane is because Donald Trump's not the president anymore.
I would more than suspect that one. And you notice that literally the day before or after the inauguration, New York and Michigan announced that they were loosening the standards. Right? I mean, what a coincidence. What a coinky dinky that is, in California too. All of a sudden, they're concerned about their economies. Oh, yes. How many people were locked down? So since we're on the topic, I should mention as a little shameless plug here, why not?
Please.
In the show, that I've now released my second short book, my second pamphlet, if you will. I mean, I'm limiting these books to about 10,000 words. So these are quick books. This is my second one. I'm writing them all. I want to write an average of one a month. And this one is called Toward Fascist America, 2021. the year of where fascism was launched. I mean, I would have called it Toward Nazi America, but I didn't because my daughter objected to that. So, and maybe it might have gotten more censored. But the book is now available and it's on Amazon. And if I think the first maybe 30 copies are free. So if you want to get a copy free, get up there, and grab your copy. Just put my name in the server, Charles Moscowitz, and you'll see Toward Fascist America come up, and put that title in there and you can get a copy. So,
Well, what was your thought process behind that? Was it?
well, I mean, I started writing the book right after the Capitol incursion, and
Oh,
looking at the reaction to that. Never mind who was behind it and who wasn't. I don't think we know that. My personal gut feelings about that, as somebody who has been observing news and culture for a long time, and based on what I have seen of it from videos and photos, is that it didn't look to me like Trump supporters. It just doesn't. I mean, I can't prove that scientifically. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I have a hunch about it that is more than somewhat educated. To me, it looked like agitators. We know already that one of the ringleaders was an Antifa follower, that being Mark Sullivan.
right.
We also know that apparently one of the other ringleaders, it turns out today, was a former FBI agent who still had security clearance. And, the way the media is playing that is that he was, had PTSD, and that he had was ill. And that's how his lawyer is also playing it, that he's got illnesses and that he'd been wounded in battle and whatnot. But, but the thing that they don't mention is that, there very well may be a corrupt element within the FBI. See, these are the same people. Remember Peter Strzok, right?
I would count on that. I wouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, there was just the FBI. This guy, Kleinsmith, who was a lawyer for the FBI, he's just been convicted. They gave him a slap on the wrist, but he was just convicted of altering documents to try to get the FISA courts to spy on Carter Page as a way to get into the Trump campaign and spy on Trump. And, he's been tried and convicted for that. So, there seems to me between that and, McCabe having to resign under pressure and be essentially fired, who was the deputy, Comey, right? Basically leaking to the press after meeting Trump, and just really engaged in very unethical, activity. That it's very possible that there might have been the same rogue elements in the FBI that might have instigated this thing. I'm not saying the FBI itself did anything, and I admire the FBI. I'm saying that there might be rogue elements within the government, because, when you look at a situation like this, you have to ask the question that any investigator asks: cui bono, who benefits? And certainly Trump didn't benefit from this. Do you think that Trump benefited by having that guy with the horns and the fuzzy hat show up, in the Senate? I mean, how would that benefit Trump? What it did was it shut down Congress at the very moment that they were hearing evidence of voter irregularities in 7 states.
Funny how that worked.
Yeah. I mean, I was watching it on television. I think you were my guest that day, but I was watching the hearings on television. The states are called out alphabetically to present their delegations and to have certification. And at that time, a state that was contesting their election, if there was one House member and one senator who jointly signed a document contesting the election, then that state is entitled to up to a 2-hour hearing.
Correct.
Where evidence is presented. This isn't new. This happened in 2004, I think, where Ohio was contested in the Bush election by none other than Barbara Boxer of California. She was the senator, and then there was a local rep who's co-signed with her. And there was a contestation, there was a hearing, and it was decided that Ohio was fine. The point I'm making is that everybody in my side, and I hope most Americans, were waiting for that time when 7 states that were contested would have their day before Congress where they could present their evidence. And then we could find out one way or the other. Maybe we'd find out that there wasn't any problems. Either way, we would get to hear the evidence, we get to hear the testimony, and that's how the system is supposed to work. And when they called Arizona, which was the first one on the list because they do it alphabetically, Arizona was just beginning, the people there were just beginning to present their evidence. And it was really powerful. I don't know if you saw any of that, but it was shocking. It was real. The country was paying attention. The media was paying attention. They had no choice. Everything was starting to unfold. And then all of a sudden, the guy with the buffalo wings shows up. Everything gets shut down. Everything is stopped. Everything is, canceled. And then they reconvene at midnight, right? When everyone's asleep and the cameras are gone and the media's gone. And they just gavelled Biden in. No hearings. The 7 states will never be heard. We're never going to get to the bottom of this because of that. When people say, "Oh,"
and that's why I'm so sure that Trump was behind it, right?
Well, that's my point. I mean, and Trump is to be blamed. I mean, all of a sudden, oh no, he wanted to overthrow the government by having a bunch of guys show up in black leather jackets. They're going to overthrow the government. I mean, the idiocy of this, the stupidity of it is shocking. I mean, it's so ridiculous and so obvious. And, here they
so
are.
Ridiculous that the media pursued that line, which, by the way, is, I have to tell you, you may be upset, but I think it started before Dobbs was kicked off TV, but I just stopped watching stuff after that because it was so absurd and pointless.
Oh, it's really aggravating. And then of course, they have the snap impeachment. No hearings, no debates, no testimony, nothing. They just, once Nancy Pelosi was told that Trump would not be removed from office for being insane, which they've been working on doing for 4 years, they just gabbled through the impeachment. And now we have this. I mean, this is like, again, I'm trying to be careful here because this is YouTube, but my way of thinking is that this is like the Carthaginian answer to a coup. They've taken over. They have this city. Now they're trying to bulldoze any ruins. When Rome took over Carthage, they literally flattened a city of probably 100,000 people. Just completely went in with bulldozers, flattened the place completely as if it never had existed. And then they salted it. They poured salt over it. That's what they're trying to do. They don't want to ever hear about this again. They're using the total, Carthaginian approach. And
you notice that it hasn't bothered them one little bit that they're destroying the institution that they're supposedly trying to protect.
Oh, I don't think they care. I mean, they've never respected it anyways.
Right, but what's the long-term play here? Okay.
Power.
To what end, though?
Well, first of all, I think that they understand that, how should I put this? They understand that interesting things happened in this last election. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
I'm not saying what those interesting things are. I think that our listeners know what I'm getting at. But the point of the matter is that they really want to bury that now. Even in their own conscience, whatever remnants they may have of a conscience, which isn't much. They want to get this thing out of the picture and then to move on with whatever their agenda is. And I doubt if they even know what that is. To what end? Power. They don't know. I mean, it's just, they had to create a paradigm by which they would obtain power. And now they're going to just move forward and bulldoze the city, and like the Romans did to Carthage.
Well, the good thing here, though, is that they're overreaching to almost a comic extent. This idea of Pelosi fining members for not going through the security when she violated it herself 4 or 5 times.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be pushback. And like anything else, you're going to have the loyalists up to a point. But the bottom line of all this is people have to be reelected. So you're only going to carry water for Nancy Pelosi so far. If she starts,
you're getting to the real question here, which is, and which I'm hopeful about, which is, are they going to pull this? I mean, they know that there's an election coming up literally in months, and that, they're holding on to the House by a tiny thread. I think it's
Right.
only 5 members. It's the slightest majority in probably a generation. And they're probably going to lose that majority because even in the best of situations, usually the first midterm after a president takes power, that party loses some seats.
Yeah.
So they can't afford to lose too many. I mean, apparently even in New York, this recent contested election finally has been resolved in favor of the Republicans. So they're down to like just a shadow. And I think that combined with the fact that Republicans did well across the board, it was not a landslide, but it was a mandate on the state level, on the state congressional level, and on the state legislative level, that they just, they're probably going to lose a lot of power to, in the next election. So I don't know. I mean, maybe they're using, again, the total destruction tactic, figuring that's the only way they're going to go. Or maybe it's just this is the last gasp of the Trump derangement. I don't know. It could be probably a combination of the two.
Yeah, well, I think that other than real political junkies, people have been so turned off. I think with this second impeachment, that ridiculous opening statement by Jamie Raskin.
Oh, you mean when he's like pretending to cry?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I saw that. I mean, Biden is there crying about Hunter Biden, right? We're supposed to now feel sympathy. Anyway, I think let me give out the phone number. This is a live show and we do take calls here. So you're welcome to join the program, 617-396-4958. That number again is 617-396-4958. We're talking about the impeachment. We're talking about COVID-19. You can bring up any topic you want if you want to call in, as long as it's within the bounds of community standards. So you're welcome to join the program. We're live.
Opposing viewpoints, especially welcome.
Is what?
Opposing viewpoints, especially welcome.
Especially, I always love opposing viewpoints. That's never a problem. I'm not into censorship. I've got a text here from TikTok. One world government, they are defaming America to destroy pride and usher it in. I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's clear. These executive orders are absolutely in that direction. I mean, I think that somebody in the Biden orbit, who knows Biden, what he thinks. I mean, that's very questionable, but they've even said they want to dismantle Trump's idea of putting America first. What does that tell you?
Well, what does it tell you when Jan Psaki basically mocks, I think it was Steve Ducey's or somebody's question about where are all these green jobs? Okay, by the stroke of a pen, you eliminated 11,000 jobs on Keystone XL pipeline. So
more than that.
I'm one of the guys. So point me to where I can get this green job. All right. And it's the same BS. There are no green jobs. All right.
Yes, it's crap. And it's more than just 11,000 jobs. There's 11,000 people who literally woke up the next day and had a pink slip.
Oh,
They're out of work. But it's really, in the broader sense, it's probably 100,000 jobs if you look at all of the ancillary industries,
ramifications of it, the service industries, the
whole ripple effect.
Top restaurants that serve those little towns.
And we don't know why he did it, because first of all, apparently, I mean, this is terrible, but those executive orders were sitting on his desk the minute he walked into the Oval Office. They had been set up by none other than former Attorney General Bill Barr. apparently. Did you hear that?
Well, yeah. Well, look, the whole thing with that guy, he's such a swamp guy. Who was it who recommended Bill Barr to Donald Trump? I think it was Chris Christie. That's what I heard.
That's right.
Bill Barr was terrible even years ago when he was in the Bush administration.
Yeah.
Never forget that he was the guy who pro bono defended the FBI sniper that shot Vicky Weaver. All right. Why? Okay, fine. The guy deserves a defense, obviously, but why be the first in line?
You know, he should have put in Sidney Powell, is what he should have done, but putting that aside,
Yeah.
That would have been amazing. But anyway, so Biden has this pile of executive orders. Apparently, this one, there's never been an explanation for it, but I assume that the public is the radical left part of the public thinks that this is good for the environment.
But of course it isn't.
No,
I'll tell you why.
It's actually very environmental.
Oil still has to be transported to the refineries farther south in Texas and other places. Now it's going to go by rail or by truck. So this was, I'm sorry, like every single other point in the environmental movement since Rachel Carson, it has been wrong. Every single key point they have ever come out with has been wrong, and somehow it doesn't matter. When Paul Ehrlich was talking in 1968 about the population
bomb, yeah,
famine 1973, it was ludicrous, but people, that was drummed into their heads the same way that they're drumming climate change into the heads of the kids now. With notwithstanding the fact that for hundreds of years, countries have dealt with coastal changes, have dealt with adjustments in the environment.
Look what the Dutch did. They created.
The Dutch are a good example. They're not the only one.
I mean, they literally created this incredible system of dams and dikes and, embankments. I mean, they wouldn't have a country today if they hadn't done that. I mean,
and all that stuff, the Dynasty Project, that goes back to the 40s and 50s. We have better technology now. But the other thing is, and it's incontrovertible, that in general, a warm climate is better for people than a cold climate. The crops grow better.
Coral reefs do better. I mean, the ocean does better. People think that it's damaging.
So this whole thing is just one more typical thing, like evil DDT and anything else they wanted to hang their hat on, which it doesn't matter. I mean, you will not be wrong if you go out and say every major environmental precept that they've pushed has been wrong.
And also, I mean, I think that he has an executive order to rejoin the Paris climate agreement, which is really just another giveaway to the oil companies, because the price of fossil fuels is going to go up in this country. That's going to hurt working people. It doesn't hurt rich people like George Soros.
Well, he obviously doesn't care about working people. I mean, there's never been in American history, with the stroke of a pen, you've instantly eliminated thousands of jobs. There's no precedent for that.
No, it's horrendous. And the Paris Agreement that gives Russia and China exemption, so that's a gift for them.
And India.
And India. So there you go. I mean, they're the biggest polluting countries. I mean, they're using dirty fuel, as they say. The other one, I mean, he stopped construction on the wall on the Mexican border. And now you have caravans moving up into the border. You have a cancellation.
None of whom have COVID, by the way.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they're going to be wearing masks. And you have the cancellation of a program by which we had embassies working in Mexico and in Central America processing visa applications, so that people who actually had a legitimate case of getting refugee status wouldn't have to go to the border. You could do it there. And it also,
how much contrary to all these things have you heard from the establishment Republicans.
Well, you know something, that they're worse than, I mean, you're talking about like the Mitt Romneys.
Well,
They
I'm not
are,
going to talk about the Mitt Romneys. You look at McConnell. You can look
oh
at
my
the
God,
the
the worst.
institutional types,
We have to get them out.
which I have to raise this question, which people don't like hearing. All right. You remember, you watched on TV, you see the quote good guys like Jim Jordan and Louis Gohmert
Oh, Merritt, yeah.
and Andy Biggs, and you can name some of the good guys. All right, but here's my question for you. Why would you want to be part of an organization where 95% of the people were terrible? And knowing that despite the fact that you're a good guy, you're not going to be able to change anything. So what is the personality there?
Well, I
Is
mean,
it,
I
is
think a
it the
lot of
old
that's
Catholic idea that you still get credit for, you still get the intentions, or I'm sorry, you still get the indulgences if you do this?
Well, you get to stand in there and see it firsthand and report on it. You could be like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah.
I know I don't know, she's actually pretty amazing. I mean, she gave a press conference the other day where she just kicked the crap out of this whole, you know, these rhinos and just other people. And
you want to talk about lack of self-awareness on the left with Marjorie Taylor Greene. They were raising all this crap about, isn't it terrible that people in Georgia have been disenfranchised of Stacey Abrams, you know, the voting and the voting suppression. It's okay, great. Well, here we have a real live member of Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and you're disenfranchising all of her constituents because she can't be on any committees. So please.
well, I mean, that whole thing is a fraud anyways. I mean, disenfranchising voters is what I'm worried about, as in, well, we again, we can't talk about this too much, Mike.
No,
You know,
but I
because
mean,
YouTube won't allow me to.
the fact that Greene has been removed from committees.
That's terrible.
And if you're going to do that, what about all these flamethrowers on the left?
Yeah, what about you know, Rashida Tlaib, who said
And
that the
Ilhan
Holocaust gives
Omar.
her, the Holocaust gives her a warm and fuzzy feeling, she
Yeah.
says. Yeah,
So
she's fine.
I don't know why. I mean, if I were one of the good guys, I would start raising hell about what's happening to the institution. And we've got to get rid of the speaker because she's tolerating one major abuse after another. I mean, I'm telling you, when the kids 50, 100 years from now read the history of this period, the first question is, who the hell was Nancy Pelosi that allowed this thing to deteriorate in this manner?
Yeah, there's something seriously wrong with her. I mean, you just look at her, the way she conducts herself. I mean, I want to be careful here because this is YouTube.
Yeah.
But you know, I get Trump derangement to a certain extent. You know, I mean, I get people don't like his style, fine. You know, they don't like his policies, okay, debate them in Congress. You know, bring them up. But she's like, you know, with the ripping of the State of the Union address.
Yeah.
What is it so horrible? I mean, and then of course, right after the Capitol incursion, she's on the phone with the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying, don't listen to Trump. You know, I mean, that's it. That's, you know, there's a word for that. It begins with a T.
So where's the loyal opposition talking about her? You know, are we going to have this parliamentary Marquess of Queensberry lace curtain country club affair? Or are we going to figure out how to at least turn this into a rational situation? So, you know, for all the talk of the Jim Jordans, et cetera, and frankly, all the investigations that are done by Judicial Watch, it hasn't added up to anything. And it's frustrating when you hear, oh yeah, we've got the goods on this guy and nothing is ever going to happen.
No, it's going to be worse now. They're never going to get to the bottom of like Pfizergate, you know, the spying, and I mean, that's over. And we'll never know that because, you know, Biden's people or whoever is behind the throne is in charge. I mean, they're never going to let that happen. We're
Whatever
gonna,
happened to investigative reporting?
well, I mean, there were three legs to the stool that all three of which failed to find out this past election. The first one was the media, which is gone. The second was the court system, which is pretty much gone, including the Supreme Court. And then the third one was done away with I think by the guy with the Viking horns, the congressional hearing. So there's none. Anyways,
I think it's a sad commentary, and you don't hear it discussed very often. That to use the old cliche, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. I think there's some serious issues with the way the federal government system is set up now with respect to what's going on. Because if the judiciary can't work, and the legislative branch can't work, and the executive branch can be, let's say, mysteriously adjusted, what recourse do people have?
what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, you would think that there'd be gadflies talking about this, but they're not. On the right, you see a bunch of programs decrying the situation, bringing over the same guests every week or every day to talk about this, that, and the other. And on the left, it's the same thing. So why is anybody even watching?
I mean, I'm one of those gadflies. I don't know what to do. I mean, I bring people on. We can sit here and chew the fat.
Yeah.
What can you do? I don't know. I mean,
well, I guess you can only hope it'll get bad enough that something might change. But I think people are so disgusted with what's going on that they've, in many cases, just given up the fight. I mean, consider, even if you completely disagreed with Trump, what is really the point of basing this new administration on only being 100% negative? We're going to undo everything this guy did. That's our platform.
And without any, I mean, and there's no rationale for it. Now, I don't even think Biden wants to have caravans of people crossing the border.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he does. I don't know. But I mean, I actually, look, I know that, maybe I'm the type that's going to go down with the ship and all that, but I still believe that Donald J. Trump is going to play a role. I don't think he's done. My understanding is, and one of my sources on this is Steve Turley, because, and also Steve Bannon has been talking about this
right.
on the Pandemic War Room, which is excellent. You can't get it on YouTube now. You have to go, you still can get it on Apple. You go to the Apple, I mean, I listened to it through the app. And that is that Trump is planning a comeback, and that he is going to be running in 2024, and that he will probably win if he stays healthy and he stays safe, and that it's going to be the most incredible comeback in the history of this country, possibly in the world.
Well, from your lips to God's ear, but I mean, I've seen, not in politics, but I've seen situations in the medical field, which, let me tell you what happens. There was a guy, obviously will not mention his name, doctor in Beverly Hills, California, who actually was my doctor when I lived there, from the time I was 15 years old to when I left California. For various reasons, he ran afoul of the extremely left-wing medical establishment in the state. So what they did was they arranged for a couple of, in retrospect, obviously trumped up incidents to get him in trouble with the licensing board. The first one involved a 95-year-old woman who was in terrible health that needed prescription refill. In theory, should require an office visit. She was in bad shape. He'd been treating her for 5 million years. God forbid he refills the prescription without seeing it. Strike one.
Okay.
Strike two, a longtime patient of his insisted that he please see my son. He's troubled, blah, blah, blah. The doctor didn't really want to do it. He knew something about this family and so on, but as a favor, he did. Out of the blue, this son accuses the doctor of making some sort of sexual assault in the office, which was completely ridiculous. All right, anyway.
Yeah.
In his defense, he gets 1,500 letters of commendation from his patients over the years. The California board doesn't even read any of it. And when he called me and told me about all this, he said, you know, Mike, this is a number of years ago. I'm 75 years old. I've had a good practice. I have enough money. You know what? Screw them.
Right.
So I'm afraid that Donald Trump,
I get it.
some of those thoughts might be going through his mind.
Yeah,
Hey, you know what?
after
I
all,
did good.
He
I
did.
got shafted for it.
He could go back to his golf game and be very proud and talk about his accomplishments with his friends. I mean, that's right. I mean, that's exactly. I mean, maybe he's like, I've had it. I mean, my family has had it.
Yeah.
It's enough already. I mean, it was horrible to see him as he was departing. I mean, you could see his daughter was there with tears, and it's just the whole thing had such tragedy to it. He seemed like he was fine, but so yeah, we don't know. I mean, maybe he might just say, all right, I've had enough of this. But, he seems to be the type of guy that thrives on this sort of adversity.
That is true.
He seems to, I mean, I've heard things like, for example, apparently Don Jr. is in conversations with Elon Musk about creating an alternative media entity to compete.
Oh, that would be killer.
Oh, yeah, to compete with Facebook or Twitter.
And the first host they should hire is you.
Well, I mean, I'll be as much involved with it as I can. I mean, anybody. And there are some other things that are kind of rumbling out there. I mean, these are all, I don't have any proof of any of it, but, these are all rumors. And that Trump has apparently made a few comments to people. I mean, he had a conversation with Rick Grenell, who was acting director of Homeland Security, who's a good friend. And he made some comments. Rick Grenell didn't come out and say what the conversation was, but there were little implications that Trump is thinking about things in going forward. And I mean, I hope that he does. And I think that he's one of these unique people in history. I mean, that really, has changed and could continue to change history. He knows what the score is. I mean, he understands how these inner workings. I mean, on the one hand, I'm critical that maybe he could have done a better job of not getting, sucked in with people like Bill Barr and some of these other traitors to him. But on the other hand, look, it's easy to say from the outside.
Well, I would defend it this way. All right. His first reaction upon taking office was, holy crap, I got to fire everybody. But then he realized, no, how can you do that?
No, he should have fired. I mean, actually, that is.
Oh, I agree.
No, this is actually something that I am critical of Trump over, because this is what new administrations do. I mean, Biden is doing it, and I get that. He's just fired all of the federal attorneys.
No, well, I mean, that's common, but I mean, where I was going with this is that he didn't want to underscore his reputation of being a bull in a china shop, but maybe he should have. And I promise you that Bill Barr lied his ass off to Trump about what he was going to do.
I mean, that seems quite obvious now. And Bill Barr was one of these people who spoke so eloquently with conservative values, and he was giving
Yes.
speeches. He had everybody conned. I was sucked in by it.
Well, I just knew his history, and I
That's right.
hated.
And maybe Trump is a little too trusting.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Well, Trump was not used to, I don't believe, and I can't read his mind, but I don't think in business, not politics,
mhm.
I don't think he had ever encountered people in a trusted position flat out lying to his face.
Yeah.
That would happen in politics.
And more than just lying, I mean, sabotaging him. I mean, sending
Yeah.
out, leaking his phone calls. Obama, as bad as he was, that would never happen with Obama because Obama was spying on everybody. He
Yeah.
was bugging everyone's phones. I mean, he was eavesdropping. Kennedy and Johnson used to meet with J. Edgar Hoover, who would give them the dirt on everybody
Right.
so they could keep them in line. I mean, I think Nixon, of course, had the bugs. The point is that Trump didn't do this. He kind of came in there and, people would scratch their heads when all of a sudden the New York Times would come out with a front page piece about his conversation with the Prime Minister of Australia,
Right.
emphasizing some stupid comment or something embarrassing. They'd pull it out of context. But nobody thought to ask, how did they get that conversation? Was somebody listening in? Did somebody call them? I mean, he had people in the White House who were sabotaging him. These are crimes, by the way. That's a felony. You don't release, this is like what Nixon was accused of doing 10 times over. You had people in there just waiting for their moment to come out and try to stab him.
Well, I don't think he fully appreciated the environment he was coming into.
Yeah, that's right.
And he didn't appreciate the absolute disloyalty of all these people, or maybe better expressed, the loyalty these people have to the quote system. I mean, it's a pretty sinecure setup at that point. Once you get in to some relatively high level federal job, you got it made. You'll maybe get kicked out the next administration, but you can go to work for the media or for a university or an NGO or something. So it's a pretty sweet deal.
It is. And this is like a revolving door. I mean, people go in and out for a few years, and then they come back. So.
But the history of these people is just appalling. And maybe he could see all this, but just didn't want to believe it was as bad as it is. You can look at the history of a guy like Tony Fauci, which is terrible. With the AZT during the AIDS thing and all the other screw ups of this guy. But I think Trump, and again, I'm reading his mind here, maybe was a little naive in that it surely can't be as bad as it appears. But it was worse.
Oh, it was terrible. And it was on steroids because, as you say, you get these career people in Washington who, Trump was openly and vigorously against them. And they did whatever they had to do to stop him. And I mean, look, in spite of all of that, his administration was probably the most successful in since Lincoln.
That's the big irony. Yeah.
Well, since FDR, maybe the first 20,000 days, in terms of getting stuff happening and doing, and we can only imagine how successful he would have been had he been surrounded by people who were on the same page. Anyway, maybe hopefully now he has learned this, and moving forward, it'll be a different ball game. We'll see.
I'd love for him to start a media network with
that would be
Elon Musk, be on television, just regular TV, and start going toe to toe with the others. And we'll see.
And once he gets beyond this phony impeachment, they have the Trump haters have their last sexual experience. Let's just call it that. And he moves on because he's probably not going to be convicted. Then I think it's going to be full steam ahead. He's going to start to do these rallies. He's going to start to support Republicans who are actually going against the rhinos. He's in. I mean, you have a recent poll from Rasmussen shows that he is way ahead as the projected candidate for 2024 by something like, I think it was like 65%.
Oh, gee.
And the next person down the line was Pence, and he was like in the single digits. I think he was like at 10. And of course, Biden entered office in the same Rasmussen poll with, I think it was 47%, which is terribly low. I mean, Obama entered with like 65%. Trump entered with 55 or 60. So, this is a very weak, administration. And I think that once Trump gets going and once he kind of gets his mojo back, he's going to have a lot to work with on this.
Last question for you.
Yeah.
Will it get to the point, and I think relatively soon, where Biden is screwing up so much that even the sycophant media will turn on him a little bit?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's so awful now. I mean, with Psaki, I mean, with circle, I'll circle back to you, what they call circle back Psaki. Did you see the YouTube video on that? I'll circle back. I'll circle back. I'll circle back. I'll circle back. And it's so boring and so lame. Of course, they don't have all the leaks to work with. They don't have the FBI, people dropping a dime on Biden. Nobody knows what he's doing or what he's thinking. So it's just dull. You look at that press conference and the way the media is just, it's just feckless. I don't know. I think one of the reasons they're keeping this conviction alive is because they're making money from it. Trump is revenue.
Yeah.
He brings ratings. I mean, Rachel Maddow, what's she going to talk about? She spent 4 years making millions with the top ratings, attacking Trump every day, and they're hooked on it. So, if he, with him gone, what are they going to do? I mean, they're going to talk about Biden, really? I mean,
they're going to fade away. I predict people are going to stop watching these shows. Even the liberals. What's the point?
Well, they're going to try to invent a new enemy of the masses. This is what they're trying to do with Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's not going to work. It's just it ain't going to have the same action. I mean, they need Trump. They want Trump, right? Anyways, Mike, listen. Thanks for joining me. As always.
Always a pleasure.
And we'll talk next week.